Hello and welcome to the pod. I'm Nathan Fink.
I'm Jolyn Drennan, and this is New Hampshire Family Now,
a show about building family in the Granite State. Today on the podcast, Jolyn and I once again welcome Dr. Melissa Merrick, President and CEO of Prevent Child Abuse America, to celebrate 50 years of prevention and tell stories, as well as listen to yours.
So I am where I am because of coffee. The story's only accurate if you allow swear words.
Which we don't. But we did. New Hampshire Family Now is brought to you by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. Since 1962, the Charitable Foundation has worked hand in hand with generous and visionary citizens to maximize the power of giving and support, collaborate, and lead innovative initiatives. Initiatives like New Hampshire Tomorrow, which is focused on making sure children and families have access to education, healthcare, and career pathways to ensure every family member thrives. To learn more about New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and all their initiatives, go to www.nhcf.org. This podcast was also brought to you by Family Support New Hampshire. Family Support New Hampshire is NH's coalition of family resource centers and family strengthening programs that exist to ensure Granite State families have access to resources so both caregivers and children can succeed, because supported families are strong families. To find a family resource center near you, visit www.fsnh.org. Hey, it's Nathan, co-host of New Hampshire Family Now. I wanted to take a quick break from the show because it occurred to me the other day that I've never asked you to subscribe to this podcast. Subscribing is free, and when you do it, it helps our placement algorithms, making it that much easier for caregivers across New Hampshire to find valuable information and strategies for their families. Also, you'll be alerted when a new episode drops. And if you like the show, leaving a review helps us that much more. So go to wherever you get your podcast, type in New Hampshire Family Now, and as the kids say, smash that subscribe button. I say click it, because if you smash it, then you're going to need a new one. Thank you and enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today, Jolyn and I have the great pleasure of once again welcoming Dr. Melissa Merrick, President and CEO of Prevent Child Abuse America, whose critical work is realized by promoting programs and resources informed by science that enable kids, families, and entire communities to thrive. Dr. Merrick, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. It's so great to be with you all again.
I have to say that you're back made me wonder if you forgot your keys or something. I'm assuming that you and your family are transitioning back into school mode and that your kids have settled.
As well as can be expected. You know how it is back to school. Lots of transitions, getting used to in person again, and masks not required. So a little bit of an unusual start to school, but sports are picking up and we're as busy as ever. So I'm sure you all the same.
Yeah, well, I'm part of me wonders, because that transition for us is always kind of startling, though I suppose like anything else, you know, that given enough time, you and your family can make the adjustments that you need to meet them and your kids where they're at. Now, I know Prevent Child Abuse America is turning 50 this year, which is a tremendous milestone. And maybe this is too big a question to wrap your arms around, but 50 years in, where is Prevent Child Abuse America at?
Goodness, it is a huge question. And I mean, I feel so proud of where we are. We're really in the business of prioritizing prevention as a comprehensive public health problem that has solutions, right? And I think we've talked about this before. Prevention is possible. So it's an exciting time to kind of reflect on our past, but also envision the future, and also to invite partners in this work, because prevention can only happen in partnership. And so we are really crazy and busy, but we are really doing some really important and impactful work.
Knowing that organizations and people and families are born into certain circumstances, which can help inform their growth and focus. What gave rise to PCA America, and how have those circumstances shaped the organization into what it is today?
Yeah, it's such an important question. And certainly because we're in our 50th year, it is a moment that we're reflecting a whole lot on our history and sort of where we started. And, you know, in 1972, our founder, Donna J. Stone, a philanthropist, she just really had a vision that no child would ever be abused or neglected. And so she started this organization with really really the key mission of raising awareness, right? So I think the first kind of 20 years or so of this work, the first phase was really built on that, like raising awareness and commitment to prevention of child abuse and neglect, but really just establishing it as a problem and getting people to understand that this was happening in families. I think then we shifted toward, we're all do-gooders. We shifted straight to what can we do about it? Intervention, right? And we developed lots of programs, including our evidence-based home visiting model, Healthy Families America, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. And then I think it was sort of like a moment, a natural evolution. Oh gosh, building evidence, right? And recognizing that there's a public health imperative here. And so really a lot of studies in that next sort of wave of the organization. And now, again, for the future, really prioritizing that public health approach, prioritizing a comprehensive approach where it can't just be a single program or multiple programs. Even it needs to be also policy and advocacy, also research, also an iterative kind of process, but still based on this real truth that prevention is possible. In partnership, we need everyone doing this work alongside us and partnering with people outside of our networks to do this work. So we have sort of our nationwide state chapter network that you all know. We also have, HFA sites, 600 sites of our program around the country. And then again, just new and old or usual partners in this work working together with us. So I just see it as sort of a natural kind of evolution of really finally being at the point where we could really prioritize what families need and making sure families have what they need, when they need it, where they live before they find themselves in crisis, so that kids can go on to be healthy and happy and prosperous and the next generation over.
This might be a silly question, but fall is coming, which I love fall because you get to pull out sweaters. And I'm thinking of the seasonality of things. 50 years is a long swath of time. And that, you started out, that first 20 years was raising awareness of this problem, right? It's happening, it's happening, it's happening. There's a part of my mind that thinks that public health issues has a cyclicalness that is progression, reflection, awareness raising toward forward momentum. And this is a very messy question because as you responded, I thought, is there something in the thinking 50 years in where you're realizing as an organization that awareness raising will always be part of this, but maybe the shape changes in some capacity?
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like, as you summarized, we started trying to raise awareness and commitment to the problem of child abuse and neglect. And we are now really poised to be raising awareness and commitment to the prevention solutions. So it's like what works under what circumstances, for whom, by whom, who needs to be the deliverer, who needs to be the messenger, all of these sort of nuances about this work, right? And that's where it makes it exciting because there's a role for everyone in the prevention solutions, right? Where there's a role for every sector, for every discipline, for every partner, for every friend, every family member, neighbor. We all make a difference in transforming lives.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I guess in our minds, especially here in New Hampshire, we've found so much traction in the idea of family strength, where, you're talking about the prevention of abuse and neglect, but there's so much energy around celebrating what that looks like in motion, because all of a sudden it's this different aspect where prevention is right alongside it. And the family strength is just this beautiful, bright banner of this is where we're going.
It feels absolutely right. It feels like, if I use my topic in particular to illustrate this, the prevention of child abuse and neglect, the dominant narrative still, child abuse and neglect, oh, that happens in those families over there, but blame and shame families. And we go straight to saving kids from bad parents. That is not what prevention is about. Prevention is this recognition that none of us do this parenting job alone. We all need supports, and maybe my family needs different supports than other families, but we're all connected. And in fact, when we elevate that connection, we don't have to talk about child abuse and neglect at all. We talk about the conditions that families need to thrive overload of stressors that are on families, when we remove them, when our conditions are filled with safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments, when people have the supports, the economic supports, the emotional supports, the other kinds of things that they need on the front end before they find themselves in crisis, we can actually achieve multiple of our nation's health and well-being goals. So it becomes less about the prevention of child abuse and neglect or other early adversity only, but the promotion of health, of well-being, of hope, of thriving, of prosperity. So it's exactly right that prevention is possible, and that when we have strong families and strong communities in a country that supports their success and well-being, goodness, what is the transformation for the generations to come?
I just wanted to kind of chime in around the work that's going on in New Hampshire and what I've seen. It's just so incredible so we're expanding our HFA programming. And recently, so the Children's Trust and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation had partnered on a project that we're calling the Trestle Funds, where the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation provided a significant amount of funding for us, the Children's Trust, to administer to our network of family resource centers. And it's to meet the acute needs of families. And we were able to collect a lot of the data around that. And what the data was showing, it's all families. It was all income levels, all demographics, all socioeconomic statuses. It was, so it really just demonstrates that all the things that you just said, when no family is, exempt, high stress, low access to resources in any family. And so being able to alleviate some of those acute needs for families has just been absolutely incredible.
Such powerful and impactful work that you're describing. And it's like, when we allow communities and families to have what they need before they're in crisis, it also destigmatizes help seeking, right? Because they would just be able to we'd all be able to access the supports and resources and services that we need to stay safe, to stay thriving, to stay healthy, to meet the needs of our family in a way that right now our systems really have not been designed to do in a really proactive way.
Yeah, it's funny because the unifier feels like it's the human experience. So my son's outside the door banging on it because he wants to go fishing. But we were fishing on the bridge this morning, and my neighbor, who they just had a baby and I knew it was coming, they drove across on the way home from the hospital. And I could see in their look something that I recognized in myself when we had our first kid, which was excitement, tired, scared. And immediately I thought, oh my gosh, I know this experience. And at the center of it, like kind of if you look and listen, which, as you know, we just had our 10th annual summit, Power of Stories, where Ann Garvin, our keynote, gave this great speech on narrative and storytelling. And that if you listen or look hard enough at the center of every story, there's this true north. And I guess I'm wondering with all this, like if you had to tell us what PCA America's true north looks like practically, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's so important to always know what is that true north? What is that North Star? What are we trying to achieve together through our collective work, right? And for me, it's very clearly that families would have what they need when they need it in their own communities, without stigma, without judgment, without blaming and shaming, and really that it would be available to them before they had an acute crisis, right? Which then requires other services and supports, often many, many more. I mean, really, when I think of that, that means there's a future of children who can just be joyful and be children, and parents who can feel strong and confident and supported. And if they don't have the answers, that doesn't mean anything bad about them. It means that they have access to people who do have the answers or what's needed. So it's really, the true north, I think, is the freedom to be able to live our best lives and our truest selves in what brings us meaning and fulfillment without this unnecessary overload of stressors and burdens that really mean that we can't be our truest, most positive, best selves. We can't use our gifts in a really transformational way when we're barred down by all these other stressors. I guess that's where my brain comes to, is this true north of just all of our basic needs are met and we're able to truly prosper and reach our maximum health and life potential.
So part of the work of prevention is striving to better systems so that they're more supportive for caregivers and families. Can you talk about what that systems work looks like on a practical level? Like, what are you doing on the daily?
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I both know that our current systems are maybe not the systems that we need or want to really achieve these true norths that we're describing, right? So our systems currently are very reactionary. It requires families to really be in crisis or something bad to have already happened before they're eligible to access services and supports that, had we provided on the front end, would have probably changed the trajectory for that family, right? So I think, we touch so many systems every day: educational system, healthcare system, food and housing and labor and, all of these systems. But right now, all of our systems kind of work in their own little silos or don't work optimally in their own little silos. So I think the systems work is transformational, but it's also really difficult because so many of our systems and our policies have sort of been designed to create the inequities that we observe, right? So when we say there are communities that are more or less impacted or burdened, right? It's not like that just comes to be. It's that many of our systems and policies were designed to create those inequities. So then for me, even though that sounds really hopeless, there's actually a lot of hope, because if those systems were designed to minoritize certain populations, then we can create new systems or change the way our systems and policies function to actually elevate family voice and elevate the needs of communities, right? There's something that Nathan said, like, about family strengths, like families and communities know what their assets are and what their strengths are. They also know what some of those barriers and challenges are, but we don't listen. We don't listen. We don't invite that kind of voice and that kind of perspective or expertise into the conversation. But the systems work really requires that we do, that we take the lived expertise along with other kinds of expertise and experience to really be intentional and inclusive about what we're trying to create together.
I have to say, it is so hope-inducing to hear you speak, but we've got to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll have more with Dr. Melissa Merrick from PCA America. Don't go anywhere. Many thanks to New Hampshire's Office of Social and Emotional Wellness for sponsoring this podcast. Started within New Hampshire's Department of Education, the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness consolidates policy development and implements projects and programs that are focused on health and wellness with an emphasis on behavioral health of all students, youth, and families. To learn more about the Department of Education and its many programs and approaches, visit www.education.nh.gov. Today's show was also brought to you by the Children's Hospital at Dartmouth Hitchcock and the Child Advocacy and Protection Program, a multidisciplinary program with the Children's Hospital established to evaluate and provide integrative care to suspected victims of child maltreatment. Together, a team of physicians, advanced practice registered nurses, social workers, nurses, and child life specialists work to provide consultation and evaluations of children who are suspected victims of abuse, so to serve in the best interest of children and families at multiple levels of prevention. For more information about Children's Hospital at Dartmouth Hitchcock and the Child Advocacy Protection Program, visit www.chadkids.org/child-advocacy. And now back to our interview with Dr. Melissa Merrick from PCA America. As I said before the break, there's a lot of hope in what you're saying, and there's something so incredibly exciting about the creation, or maybe it's the co-creation of the systems you're talking about.
Absolutely right, and that we can actually co-create the prevention solutions and systems and policies and contexts that we know families need to thrive, right? So there's something really powerful in that, realization that, oh gosh, when we actually are more inclusive of different expertise, different experience, different ideas and contexts, we can actually co-create something that's going to serve everyone well.
There's still a barrier in my head, because I really think that this is our experience. And yet, even still, I hesitate in the help-seeking mindset. Like, we say prevention, it's not only is it possible, but it's all of us. We all need it. And so I'm curious, can you think of a time in your life that you needed this thing called primary prevention, or you were affected by it personally?
Absolutely. Every day. I mean, if I'm sick, I can go to the doctor. I have access to health insurance and a clinic and facilities that are in my neighborhood that, are easy for me to access and get to. I don't need to take a bunch of, I can maybe even walk actually to my doctor's office, right? That is a primary prevention. When I had my second baby, like I had just started a new job and I was like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? But I had paid family leave, right? I could actually take time to bond with my newborn. And so could my husband, because his employer provided that. And so we could attach and bond and really figure out how to be a family of four. That's primary prevention, right? It's like things that we don't think about, right? That my kids actually in our own community, at our own school, there was after school care provided that we could afford that was high quality. So I could continue to work and my kids could be cared for and I didn't have to fear for their safety and I didn't have to seek childcare solutions in strange places, right? Which honestly, childcare in this country, let's just talk about that for a quick second. It's a whole lot, right? Some people, many people pay more in childcare than they do for their rent or their mortgage. And for some, it's just woefully unaffordable, like unattainable, right? And then when you add quality in there too, like the availability of high quality early care and education too, is really not an option for most families. But that is primary prevention. When we know that our children are being cared for when we're not able to be there, we can work, right? And we can bring our best skills and gifts to whatever the task at hand is. So I think we see primary prevention all over all the time, but we don't often think about, gosh, I can actually take the day off and not fear losing my job to take my child to a well child visit. And I can engage in preventative medical care for my children because I have a stable job and I have time off. And so it's these small things. I mean, they seem small. They're actually quite huge. But I think we experience primary prevention every day. And so many families, unfortunately, don't. But we know what they are. We know how to bring them to communities. We know how to elevate, and the childcare solutions that are happening in any communities, like we can elevate them and get them certified and, these kind of homegrown programs and stuff. We sometimes say, oh, well, they're not evidence-based. Well, guess what? They're actually transforming lives in their communities. So I think stigma is profound, not just in help seeking, but even in the services and supports that are available. And so one of our jobs is to really elevate that we all rely on all of these prevention supports. Doesn't matter if you have a PhD or some fancy degree or, your child development doesn't matter. You need other people to help in this, job of raising children, which is the most important job.
Jolene, what about you? Is there any time that you can think of that you kind of intersected with this personally?
Yeah. So I can think of two things. So one is actually systems, like is a system. And then another is just a kind of anecdotal, So I used to live in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's where my son was born. And when we left the hospital, this automatic enrollment, every child in Tennessee is into Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And so where you get age appropriate books, like once, one a month for 5 years of your child's life. And it was such a cool thing because it was like, I just had a new book and I didn't have to, go and look up like what's age appropriate for, a 6-month-old. And we just had all of these like really high quality books. And all I had to do was like just sign an opt-in basically. So there was that. And I just think that's such a cool program. And, I wish every state had it. I think she does actually have other states that are involved, but it's just such a cool thing. It's no cost, to me. It was just, I had a baby in the state of Tennessee. And then the other story, I think, is when I did live in Memphis, I grew up in New Hampshire. And so all my family, all my connections are here. And my closest family were my in-laws in Mississippi, so 2.5 hours away. And my husband worked a lot and I was alone all the time. So I was super isolated. I didn't have a whole lot of friends and I would take my son to the park and we would play. And there was just a group of moms there that essentially just adopted me and became they were like, oh, you look lonely and, you have a baby. And without them, without these, 5 women that just, brought me in, connected me with all these other women and other resources in the city, I would have just been, who knows.
And those stories of primary prevention, they're not just us, they are all around us. Let's take a listen.
So I was adopted by a white family, and it was in the 90s, so no one really knew what the heck they were doing, resources out there at the time about how to really fully integrate and celebrate your child's diversity. So my mom, she found the only other black mom at the school that I went to, and she was like, hey, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. Can you please teach me how to do her hair? And she did, and she was terrible at it. She was really bad. It was a very small thing that she knew that this is what's going to make my child feel like she's able to celebrate her blackness.
Trying to get my daughter to teaching her good habits, man, and staying on her with good habits. Because I don't know if it's projection, a psychological term, but I see things in her that I had in myself and I didn't like. I'm always trying to lead by example.
My son, at 18 months old, had an accident. He pulled a 12-cup coffee pot that had just finished brewing on his head. We ended up having to go to Shriners for 30 days. During the time that he was in the hospital, I got interested in the medical field. And I'm like, this is great. I'm really interested. How can I help? And, I really wanted to be as hands-on as possible. And so now I work at the River Center every day, and I get to do more. And I get to help more people and different people every single day. And it all happened because of coffee.
Yo llegué aquí como primera generación de Estados Unidos, prácticamente siguiendo un amor hermoso, que es mi esposo. Tuve 2 hermosas niñas. En todo el transcurso de mis 18 años que vengo estando aquí, le he enseñado el valor a ellas para que valoren la cultura y valoren las personas por lo que son. Y para mí eso es lo más fuerte y hermoso que le puedo dar a mis hijas.
So back when I was a preschool teacher, there was this one boy, and his mom was really struggling, in and out of homelessness, incarceration. So this kid had a lot going on in his life, and he was not happy to be in my classroom. He would run around while the other kids were eating saying, bish, 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 which I did not address until his speech therapy suddenly worked. But we worked really hard with this kiddo, taught him different social emotional skills, finding a soft pillow to go into when you're frustrated, getting squeezy balls, using a pinwheel for doing deep breaths. By the time he was 5, I was so proud of this kid. He had come so far. He really gained those social emotional skills. I took him aside before the graduation to tell him just how proud of him I was. And he said, with the biggest smile on his face, when I was 3, I called you a bitch. But now that I'm 5, I listen.
It's the human experience. I remember the very beginning of COVID, trying to do all of the things that I did as a employee, just in the home with children circling around, and knowing that it was time for organizations like ours to really get out there, because isolationism had never been at its peak. And I remember one night, and I've told this story before, but one night I was trying to put my son Winnie to bed while my wife was working late, and he just wouldn't settle down. I remember my blood pressure just going up and up and up. And just that first kind of realization that I was about to lose it, and took a step back, took a breath, and just realized that, in this work that we do, we like to talk about populations, not realizing sometimes, and maybe this is the help seeking, that we're talking about and to ourselves, this thing called child abuse and neglect could happen in this home. This is me in this situation right now. And I remember how aback I was taken by that, thinking, oh my gosh, this work is deeply, deeply personal. This is not something that happens elsewhere.
It is deeply personal. And I just want to thank you for sharing that. I think we all have those stories, right? Where you realize that, gosh, it just keeps piling on, the stress, and not having the outlets to the stress, right? And certainly during COVID, that was profound for so many people and, families and otherwise, just, not having those, if you like to relieve stress by going to the gym, well, the gym maybe wasn't safe for you to go, or you like to, take a walk around your neighborhood. Well, if it wasn't safe, it was just like this layering of stress, not having the normal releases that we might have. And then you have, like you're saying, Nathan, like the normal everyday stressors of being a new parent and not knowing what the heck you're doing, right. And thinking, but surely everybody else knows except me. So what's wrong with me? And and we can really go down that rabbit hole. And so it is sometimes really important to just remember, okay, put down the baby, take a breath, and during COVID, the joke between my mommy friends, like that are all, scientists and know kind of a lot and think that we should be above experiencing stress, which of course we're not, is like, guess what? It's okay to go scream in your car, right? It's okay to like shut the bathroom door and cry for a hot minute and then, get it out and not to get it out in a way that obviously is going to be unsafe to your children or your family. So it is that realization that, oh my goodness, child abuse and neglect can happen anywhere.
So now on October 28th at the Theater of the Lake in Chicago, you'll be gathering for a night of food, music, and learning about how we can all get involved in preventing child abuse and neglect. What can we expect from this wonderful celebration of 50 years of supporting children and families?
Yeah, we are so excited to celebrate in person at Theater on the Lake in Chicago. It's a beautiful venue, and we're really excited. We're going to have a live virtual conversation with Oprah Winfrey, and our vice chair of our board is Dr. Bruce Perry. He's recently written a book with Oprah, What Happened to You, really about childhood trauma and just, how it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. So we're going to discuss that. And there's going to be music. And we actually have Jessica St. Clair, who's an actress, comedian, and podcast host, who's going to be sort of emceeing the event for us that night. So I hope if people are open to a trip to Chicago or in the Chicago area, please join us. I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And again, really is going to feature the work that we've done over the past 50 years and really how we need everybody that's in the room that night and all of our partners and friends to join us in the next 50 years.
So if somebody is interested in learning more about your celebration, where can they go?
Yeah, you can go to our 50th anniversary website, which is www.preventchildabuse50.org.
Dr. Merrick, it was absolutely wonderful to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on again and for your incredible leadership of such an important organization.
Thank you guys for having me again. And thanks for all the work that you're doing in New Hampshire and around the country for children and families.
So, next time you drop by, you'll be part of the Three Timers Club. And we do send you monogram towels with our faces on them.
I can't wait. Please invite me back. I'll be involved if you don't.
Winnie, you want to come in?
Happy birthday, PCA America.
Many thanks to the Samuel P. Hunt Foundation for sponsoring this podcast. Established in 1951, Samuel P. Hunt Foundation is a Manchester-based, independent nonprofit that provides grants primarily for the arts, children and youth services, faith-based organizations, educational institutions, healthcare, and human services. This podcast was brought to you by Nixon Peabody, who delivers exceptional legal services for clients in the community by combining high performance, an entrepreneurial spirit, deep engagement, and an unwavering commitment to a culture of collaboration, diversity, and humanity. Nixon Peabody works with universities, hospitals, and nonprofits of every size to maximize impact. For more information, visit nixonpeabody.com. New Hampshire Family Now is listed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Listen wherever you get your podcasts or ask your smart speaker to play New Hampshire Family Now.